Hello, Bretflixers. I've been Bretflixing all day. This isn't the only video I've shot today, so I'm a little worn out. But I had to get this out of the way to reach my schedule and everything. Gotta take full advantage of having a day off. As you can probably tell by the title that this is another top 5 video. I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite films of the 90s. Now, as you can tell, I have my poster for Martin Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead up on my wall. Yes, that is foreshadowing for a movie I'm going to talk about. I also have on my Jurassic Park tee, this is not foreshadowing for a movie I'm going to talk about, though I love Jurassic Park. This did come out in the 90s. You know, great movie, but not on my list. I just, you know, it's a t-shirt I haven't worn yet, so I threw it on. Anyway, so let's get right down to business. Before I give you my 5, I'm going to give you some honorable mentions, which, you know, of course I have all written down here and everything. Honorable mentions: Fargo, 7, Terminator 2, The Blair Witch Project, Goodfellas, Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, Malcolm X, He Got Game, Ed Wood, Scream, Jackie Brown. A lot of incredible movies came out in the 90s. So now that I got the honorable mentions out of the way, let me give you my number 5 pick. Boys in the Hood, directed by John Singleton, 1991. A contemporary classic, Boys in the Hood. What an amazing movie! What a powerful film this was. It's a movie that's still resonating. In fact, it's probably more relevant today than it's ever been. This movie was heavily influential. It kind of kicked off the what you would call the a lot of people call it the Hood films. You know, because Boys in the Hood. There was a lot of movies that came after this that were about young black people and about their struggles. You know, and you had like Boys in the Hood. You had Menace to Society. You had Juice. You had Fresh, you know, and just so many. It's impossible to even count them. But this was kind of this wasn't the first. You know, Spike Lee made his films, was making movies before this, but this was probably the most groundbreaking. It was probably the biggest catalyst of the genre. You know, coming from a first-time director, John Singleton, the dude was like in his early 20s when he made this movie, and just how competently his craft is in this film is truly incredible. A lot of people compared him to like Martin Scorsese, and this was his first film, and he's getting comparisons to Martin Scorsese, which is a really big deal. And those comparisons are definitely deserved. And the performances from everyone, kind of, you know, it's the first film that Ice Cube was ever in, and he's amazing in the movie. Cuba Gooding Jr. is really great. Angela Bassett, Lawrence Fishburne. Just the whole cast is incredible. Now, I don't think I really need to comment on you know, what's been going on in our country recently and how this movie is kind of relevant to all that. And I don't want to get too politically minded and stuff, and I don't want to give too many statements, but this is the kind of movie where I mean, it's about a lot of things. The movie's about a lot of things. But ultimately, I feel like a film like this is just kind of about a group of people whose culture is not really taken very seriously, and they just want to be respected as human beings, and they're not really asking for a whole lot. They're not really asking for anything that costs the white community a thing, yet we still have to deny them just basic human rights, just basic respect, you know, from one person to another. That was one of the things that I feel like this film taught me. You know, because the whole like hip hop culture thing, I never really took all too seriously. I'm not a big fan of the music. To this day, I'm really not. And I come from a town where there was just a lot of middle class white kids that adopted this style, so it was the butt of a lot of jokes from me. And then I see this film and I realize, okay, wait, there are actually people like this. I mean, this is an issue. I mean, I come from I come from a pretty small town where we don't really have a whole lot of diversity. So I got my taste of diversity in films. A lot of people in this town still have no sense of diversity. Where a lot of us are very racist still, and it's pretty sad. But I see a film like Boys in the Hood, and it teaches me that these are real people, that these are real people who are hurting every day, that are dying every single day, and for what, I mean, all for nothing. I mean, it really is tragic. This is a movie of great cultural significance. This is a must see for anybody who is a decent person, and I'm not saying you're not a decent person if you haven't seen the film, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of lessons to be learned and will continue to be learned. That's why the rewatch value on this film is very, very, very high, because I don't think that the lessons are ever going to date in this. Even as we grow as a country, even if we are able to kill a lot of the racism that there is, like, we're still gonna go back on this movie and be like, okay, that's what we used to be. Film's gonna be a warning, like, we can't go back to that way. So, an incredible movie, truly, truly incredible. It's one of those, you're a better person after you've seen the movie, definitely. It's gonna make you bawl your eyes out. At least it did for me, but I mean, almost every movie does that. So, one of the most important films of all time. It's my number 5 pick for my favorite films of the 90s. It's Boys in the Hood. Magnolia, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, 1999. I just talked about a movie that was about the issues of a lot of black people. Now let's do a movie with a lot of white people who have issues. That's not exactly what the movie's about. It's not about white struggles. It's just an all-white cast. But that's a common thing to happen in cinema. A lot of things get really whitewashed, which is definitely a shame. But I'm not trying to die on this movie. Obviously, I love this movie. Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, one of the great dramas I feel to come out of all time. It is a ballsy movie. This is a heavily ambitious movie because it is a tear-jerking drama that is 3 hours long. But it is a very quick 3 hours, let me tell you. The energy, the craft of this film is very high energy. The movie is really quickly edited. The cameras are always moving. There's always a lot going on. The drama from all these characters is all perfectly balanced, and you're always interested in every single thing that's going on. In Magnolia, it's a hyperlink film where there's a bunch of different characters that are loosely connected, and they all have their own thing going on, and the film cuts between all this stuff. They're loosely connected, yet at the same time, they're very connected, which is kind of the whole point of the movie, is we're all connected. The movie is about connection. The movie is about the effects a parent has on their kid. Parents obviously project their flaws onto their kid, and their good stuff too, onto their kids, and their kids grow up to do the same thing to their kids. And so this is a movie that kind of makes you have to be like, okay, what are my flaws? I need to work on them, because that's very, very important. Otherwise, we're not going to grow as a species. Kind of like we're talking about Boys in the Hood again. We need to be aware of these issues that we have, and we need to work on them. But that's more of a societal thing. This is more of a personal thing. Work on yourself, sort of thing. Like I said, even though the movie's 3 hours, it certainly doesn't feel like 3 hours because every single character is so twisted and so messed up. They're very entertaining to watch. And even though it's a tearjerker, it's not like it's a despairing movie. It's a very hopeful film, especially at the very end, especially the very last shot. There's a lot of originality in this movie, a lot of creativity. There's great sequences. The frogs falling from the sky is probably what the film's going to be most famous for. But I also love the part where they're all singing the same Amy Mann song. I think they're singing "Save Me." I could be wrong, but anyway, everyone's singing the song in unison. That's a great sequence, and it has an incredible cast. Everyone gives great performances. Tom Cruise was nominated for an Oscar. He gives probably his best performance in his whole career in this film. And then you have other great performances from John C. Reilly, Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy. Excuse me. Jason Robards. Gosh, there's so many people in this movie. It's impossible to keep track of. Yeah, Alfred Molina's in it. Ricky Jay is in it. Julianne Moore. So yeah, this film had a lot of mixed reactions when it came out. Not everyone was a fan, but it did get what? Oh, it says right here 3 Oscar nominations. It got a screenplay nomination, supporting actor nomination, and a Best Original Song nomination. So it did have some acclaim. And over the years, as Paul Thomas Anderson has continued to make movies, he's become more and more respected, and now he's revered as one of the greatest living filmmakers there is. And he's going to go on to continue to make great films. I've seen all of his movies and love all of his movies, except for Inherent Vice. I'm yet to see that one. And they're all great. You know, they're all fantastic. And this one is probably the one that connects with me on the most personal levels. That or maybe Punch Drunk Love. You know, and I love this film. I love the high energy, and I love. It's very Scorsesean, honestly. I mean, the Scorsese's influence on this film is very, very prevalent, and but it's still not like, you know, always ripping off Scorsese. It's still very much his own film, and as Paul Thomas Anderson went on, he really developed his own style that's very, very different from this movie. Like this and Boogie Nights are just kind of like him doing a Scorsese movie in a way. He also cites a lot of references like Jonathan Demme and Robert Altman. To me, it feels very just like Scorsese, but he is the man. So I mean, if you're gonna rip somebody off, you rip off the best. But then he went on to develop his own style. Like Punch Drunk Love is just his own thing, and There Will Be Blood is entirely original too, and The Master is, and I can't speak for Inherent Vice because I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's also very original. So a very, very intense movie. I think a lot of the things in this movie might shock people just because you just see things from actors like, you know, from all these actors. You know, the roles in this film goes against the grain of what you expect from them, especially Tom Cruise and John C. Reilly and William H. Macy. Like, you know, you kind of have these preconceived style from each of these actors that you expect them to do. Like Tom Cruise, like, oh, he's a great actor, but he mostly just does the action hero roles. Well, he will break free from that every once in a while. I mean, he hasn't really done a movie this risky probably since Magnolia. But I mean, back in the 80s, he took a lot of risks. In the 90s, he took a lot of risks. And he hasn't since, so people, I think, you know, be like, okay, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, like, that's it. And then they'll see this, and like, whoa, he does have range, that's amazing. And he's amazing, he's great in it, he pulls it off. And that's like how it is from every actor in this film. So, my number 4 choice for my favorite film of the 90s is Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. From 1999, I believe I should add that in there. JFK. Directed by Oliver Stone, 1991. Yes, one of the most controversial films ever made, and probably ever will be made. One of the most passionate films from anybody. One of the most enraging films. You know, as an audience member, you watch this movie, you get really worked up watching it. And this movie's been discredited by a lot of people. It's like, oh, it doesn't really follow facts or whatever. And it does follow a lot of facts, but Oliver Stone has openly admitted that he took tons and tons of liberties and stuff on history when he was making the film, because for him, this movie isn't a documentary. He wasn't just trying to like tell you like, hey, this is what happened. For him, he was really trying to capture. He was trying to capture a mood and a feeling that we had back in the 60s when JFK was assassinated, and a feeling that we still continue to this day. Hold on, I need to take a break because this thing is pissing me off. Sorry, the case is like coming undone. It won't go back in. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's a film that tries to capture our distrust in the government, that tries to capture our paranoia, and it tries to capture just kind of the overall feeling of the JFK assassination. Yeah, when you hear the official explanation of what happened, you know, it's Lee Harvey Oswald in the Book Depository building in Texas, and you know, he got, what was it, 3 shots in 6 seconds with that bolt action rifle. It's supposed to be really clunky and not a very good rifle, and you know, his view was obscured by the trees, and it just there's no way it could have happened, and they hired all these expert shots and stuff to try to duplicate it, and not one person was able to do it, and you know, so on and so on. It just doesn't feel right. You know, you feel you're being lied to, you feel you're being betrayed, and that's what this movie is about. You know, the government of all people, you know, especially since they're appointed by the people, you know, allegedly, or whatever, not to get too political, but you know, you think that if there's anyone out there you can trust, it should be these people. Obviously, history, time and time again, has proven that that's just not the case. And this is probably the ultimate example of that, where, you know, where they're telling you one thing, but you're just like, I just can't believe you. You know, it just seems too great of a thing, that, you know, of it happening that way. It's just not. It just does not seem possible. It's also just a movie about drive and obsession. You know, Kevin Costner is brilliant in this movie when he is pushing so hard, you know, to get to trial, to actually try to convict someone of a conspiracy to assassinate the president. And you know, you see his whole life kind of starts to crumble around him because of that. I mean, there's a lot of films out there like that. You know, I think a more modern example would be like David Fincher's Zodiac, when the same sort of thing happens with Jake Gyllenhaal's character. It's just, you know, a movie about obsession. And this is a movie that's very, very much about just America, an American obsession and paranoia. You know, Oliver Stone has been attacked. For every movie he's made, really, he gets attacked. You know, that's why I love him. He's one of the ballsiest filmmakers out there. He's also one of the best there is too. You know, he doesn't just make controversial movies. You know, he makes amazingly brilliant and well-made films. You know, I mean, because JFK also is like 3.5 hours. And it feels like it's 20 minutes because you get so invested and there's so much energy, and he just plows through all the material, and he's giving you so much all the time. And also just think that this movie was considered low budget and he made it in such a short amount of time. I mean, the dude's truly brilliant. But when you think of any one of his movies, you know, especially from this period, Nixon, Talk Radio, Wall Street, Platoon, Born on the 4th of July, The Doors, even something like Any Given Sunday, like he always cranks his movies up to level 10 and makes them as energetic and entertaining as possible, without ever ditching that serious part, you know, because he's telling very serious things. He's always telling stories that he's incredibly passionate about, and that's why I love his film so much, is because you feel that passion. His movies, you know, there's movies that stay on the screen, and then there's movies that stay with you when you leave the theater or when you leave the living room or whatever. And his movies never stay on the screen. He's only made a couple that have been like that, you know. Like you take something like World Trade Center, which not really a bad movie, but it is a bad movie because it just stays on the screen. You're like Oliver, like that's not what you do. That's, you know, you make movies like this. This is what you make. I don't care if you're making a movie like World Trade Center where you're going for a more sentimental side. Like they still need to be fiery and passionate. And his films usually always are, and that's why he is one of the great filmmakers of all time. And JFK is my favorite film from his. It's also my favorite from the 90's, obviously. So maybe just like Boys in the Hood, this is going to be a movie that's always going to be relevant, and a movie that will never date because because when major changes happen in our government, at least 50% of the people are pissed off about it. Every time there's an election, at least 50% of the people are pissed off about it, especially in this most recent election. Probably going to go down as, if not the most controversial election of all time, then it's going to be one of them, you know, and not the most controversial presidency of all time, it's going to be one of them. No matter how good or how bad, you know, Trump is going to do, or his cabinet or whatever, it's gonna cause a lot of feelings from the entire American public. So to have a movie like this, it'll be a great movie to to revisit. It's very much about America. So that is my number 3 pick from the top 5 favorite films of the 90s is Oliver Stone's JFK. Chasing Amy, directed by Kevin Smith, 1997. Now, I have waited a long time to talk about Chasing Amy, really to talk about any Kevin Smith movie. And I know this movie might be kind of like really Chasing Amy, like when I've just talked about a lot of these like bona fide classics, I get Chasing Amy, which is a well-liked movie, but I don't know if a lot of people really consider it like a masterpiece or anything, even though it is in the Criterion Collection. I would love to see, by the way, Criterion, I would love to see an updated version of this. Update this movie, give it a new transfer, put it out on Blu-ray. The special features on this are from the Laserdisc. Like, when you watch like the interviews, like even Kevin Smith is just like, oh, I'm doing this interview for the Criterion Laserdisc. Like, well, it's like, dude, this is a DVD now. Like, update this movie. This movie desperately deserves it. Anyway, Chasing Amy is one of my favorite films of all time. I'll briefly describe why. It was a movie that kind of changed my life when I saw it, and it goes on one of those lists that I've talked about of films that you're a better person for having seen it. It's a movie that really has shaped my views on kind of human sexuality, and I guess that's kind of it. Human sexuality, and also just about jealousy and stuff, and because the whole plot of the movie, or the whole story, is Ben Affleck falls in love with Joey Lauren Adams. But it's a bit more it's very complicated because Joey Lauren Adams is a lesbian. And it gets even more complicated because she actually falls in love with him too, even though it goes against her nature. Now, but basically the whole point of this film is that, she didn't fall in love with him because that was what society, tells her she needs to do. She didn't fall in love with him because she's trying to fulfill some, classical sense of the American dream or anything. She fell in love with him and not because she wanted to try men. She fell in love with him because of just who he was. She says in the film, like, she opened herself up to women because she didn't want, because the chances of finding that one person who compliments you so perfectly, I'm trying to quote the movie, is so rare. So it was stupid to only look in men. So she looks into women, but by doing that, she closed herself off to men, and and the movie's not arguing that everyone should be bisexual or anything. The movie is just simply arguing that, who cares who loves anybody? Like, why should I care if a person loves a person? What does it matter to me? I mean, especially since it makes them so perfectly happy. So, when they couldn't love anybody else as strong as that, why would I want to get in the way of that? And ultimately also just because it just has nothing to do with me. So, so obviously you can kind of see what I'm getting at here with this movie. But also, like, I don't want to be too personal, but I did have some some bad experiences in a couple relationships, and it made me very sour, and I struggled with that sourness for a long time, and I think another kind of hidden theme in this movie is just jealousy, and it's kind of feeling inadequate when you realize the experiences your partner has had that you haven't had or something, and how that digs on you. And I'm not trying to say like oh, I've dated women who were with like 10 dudes before me, and that got to me. But it's like, just to think of this person who you care about has also cared about other people. That was a thing that I had a really hard time wrapping my head around. But then Kevin Smith's monologue that he gives in this film, really, that was a major healing part for me. So I am forever in debt to this movie. This is this isn't like one of his most popular films. This is Kevin Smith's like one of his serious movies, and I feel like a lot of people are turned off by that because most of what they want to hear is just like what Ben Affleck says in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is just weed, dick, and fart jokes. And Kevin Smith, the reason why his films are so loved, the reason why he has such a massive following is because he tells a lot of those jokes, but he never undercuts the human element of his movies. He's still making movies about real people. Even if they are vulgar, even if they are potheads, even if they are kind of dumb and misogynistic and frankly very, very offensive, like they're still real people, and that's kind of the draw to his films. And this was his first serious film he made, and kind of remained his only serious film probably until like Jersey Girl and so on. But that just kind of shows that he makes his movies with a lot of heart, and he makes his movies with a lot of passion. He wants to make you laugh, but at the same time, like, he wants to give you a real film, and that's why Kevin Smith is just so valuable as a filmmaker. Even now that his films have taken such a strange turn, and he's not making movies that are as, I don't want to say his films aren't personal to him, because obviously he's very proud of the films he's making now, and they are personal, but they're not as deeply emotional, I'll say, as something like this. But he's very, very valuable no matter what point of his career you're talking about. And because also he kind of like what Boys in the Hood did, where it showed a lot of people that these are real people, he kind of did that for the stoner comic book reading, video game playing crowd. It's like these are real people who experience real feelings. And also, I'm planning on doing a whole video where I just kind of talk about why I love Kevin Smith. But real quick, I gotta give him a shout out and saying that he is one of my biggest inspirations for wanting to be a filmmaker, and one of my biggest inspirations for doing this show, and one of my biggest inspirations also to just being a decent human being at the same time. He's been very pivotal to how I see the world, and how I view human beings as just human beings, and from everything from his films to Q&As I've seen him do, not in person, sadly. I'd love to meet him in person, but I haven't yet. And to just from his art, art can change the world, and art can change a person, and Kevin Smith has done that for me. So that's one of the many reasons why Chasing Amy is one of my favorite films of the 90s, one of my favorite films of all time. This goes in like a top 10 favorite movies for me, is Chasing Amy. Also, real quick, I should say that Chasing Amy is available currently to stream on Netflix Instant. When I do a later BretFlix episode, I'm going to talk about that real briefly. But it's on there, so that's my number 2 pick for my favorite film of the 90s. Bringing Out the Dead, directed by Martin Scorsese, 1999. Yes, you see, I told you that this eventually, that this poster was foreshadowing for something. I told you. I've already talked about this movie on my channel before when I did my top 5 underrated Martin Scorsese films video, which you should please check out. I'll try to put a link in the description below for you if you haven't seen it yet. And I said this was his most underrated movie. I stand by that statement, and this is my favorite film of the 90s, and quite possibly my favorite film of all time. Favorite film of all time, tied with Paris, Texas, if you saw my video that I did on the 80s. I don't know what more I can say. I don't really remember what I said in my video on the Scorsese underrated movies about this, so I'm not sure what more I can add to it. One thing I've actually, I don't ever like prepare or do any sort of preparation when I do videos, but this is the first time I've done that. There's one thing I wanted to actually read to you. One sec. It's an excerpt from Roger Ebert's review for the film of Bringing Out the Dead. I'm going to be reading it to you from the book Ebert wrote called Scorsese by Ebert. And this is an amazing book. It has all of Roger Ebert's reviews of Martin Scorsese movies that he's ever wrote. It has reconsiderations of them and everything. An amazing book. Oh, and I don't mean to brag, but I do have it signed by Roger Ebert himself, so pretty cool, I know. But anyway, the one thing I wanted to say about, because I talked earlier about in my other video, my top 5 Martin Scorsese video, how important this film was to me personally. There's one thing I wanted to read that Ebert wrote on Scorsese, on this film, but also on Scorsese in general, and it's probably the best way to sum up Martin Scorsese. He says, to look at Bringing Out the Dead, to look indeed at almost any Scorsese film, is to be reminded that film can touch us urgently and deeply. Scorsese is never on autopilot, never panders, never sells out, and always goes for broke. To watch his films is to see a man risking his talent, not simply exercising it. He makes movies as well as they can be made, and I agree with an observation on the Harry Knowles website. You can enjoy a Scorsese film with the sound off, or with the sound on and the picture off. Very flattering statement. It comes from Roger Ebert, but it's definitely true. And I love what Ebert said, where he says, you know, seeing a Scorsese movie is to see a man not exercising his talent, but risking his talent. And that's why his films are always so energetic and so exciting to watch, and just to see the innovative things Scorsese does with his camera and with editing techniques and filmmaking techniques. And this is just like the film where he cuts the most loose in, and it's truly incredible. So in an attempt to keep this video extra short, I'm gonna leave it there. If you want to see more personal thoughts on the film, go to my other video, like I said before. So that is my favorite film of the 90s, possibly my favorite film of all time, Martin Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead. Now, real quick, I'll recap as I usually do. My number 5 film was John Singleton's Boys in the Hood from 1991, and Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia from 1999, and Oliver Stone's JFK from 1991, Kevin Smith's Chasing Amy from 1997, and finally Martin Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead from 1999. So we have 2 more decades left. Next I'm going to do the 2000s. After that I'll do the 2010s so far. So thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts. What 90s films do you love that I didn't mention? Let's get the discussion going, fellas. So I love you all. Good night.